Hello, everybody. Welcome to Technically Trick episode 84. I am your host, Dave Prime. Back from the dead on my right there is our Captain Katie. How are you doing, my dear?
Alive, alive.
That-
Yeah, I do apologize for my absence. I've not been well, but I am alive and sort of kicking. Um, and I'm really looking forward to discussing this episode. It's not often we cover an episode of Enterprise, so I'm
Well, yeah,
very excited about this.
it's been a hot minute, so I figured
Yeah.
that it's high time we did an episode and hopefully this will get a good discussion going with people because it's a really sensitive topic. But before we start talking about that, say, well, one, just want to give big shout out to my sponsor Debbie or my partner Debbie. See, I was just saying backstage, it's just like they're not a sponsor, they're a partner. But yeah, say you get these great little tubs of different flavors. They got Grandpa's Denture Water. You got a lot of flavors related to the video game solo leveling, which they do cater more towards gamers, but they do work with podcasters such as us as well. But if you use that code down there, Tech Trek TREK, you get 10% off any non-bundled order, so you can try those flavors. You can get the cool little tumblers. See, I gotta find that tumbler with the cute anime guy on it.
Oh, you and that cute anime guy. Honestly, Dave, get a room.
Well, I do have room.
No, a private room. But now also, even though like W mainly caters to
Gamers.
like gamers and podcasters, it'd also be really good for studying as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, because
Like those at university, college, but and especially those late night sessions where you cram everything in at last minute. I really, but back when I was at college, I could have really done with Dubby. I didn't have insomnia then, so I needed a pick me up, and the come down from Red Bull is awful. I was quite addicted to that, whereas with Dubby, you don't get the come down,
I was
and
just gonna
I
say you
wish I'd
just
have
went
known
right
about
in
it then.
there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
it's,
wish I'd
it's
have known about it then because I always did last minute cram sessions. And so, yeah, students definitely would benefit from this.
yeah, definitely, because yeah, like you're saying, it gives you the pep without the crash afterwards, so you don't get that come down or
Yeah.
anything like that. Just a natural weaning off until you take that next shot. Or yeah, and it just comes in a little powder, you scoop it and whatever. They even have one that you can put in milk for s'mores. See, that's something that's on my shopping list. They got a big energy tears, purple dub sauce, galaxy grenade, and then the grandpa's denture water, which got I got the denture, so I think that would be very fitting for me
In
to try
honor of
that
the
one out.
partnership, I've said this before, in honor of the partnership, they really should do Dave's Denture Water.
Oh, well, maybe that'll get some more subscribers. Who knows?
Yeah,
But
I think
yeah,
that'd be fun. I wonder what that tastes like. I wonder what Grandpa's Denture Water would taste like. It
it's
doesn't
like
sound very nice, but I imagine it tastes delicious.
I think it's papaya or pitaya and something else. But yeah,
Mm.
definitely just if you're watching on other channels because we got Rumble going on, we got Legacy Zach Keys simulcasting this on his YouTube as well. So if you want to like and subscribe for everything Trek, just go over to my Dave Prime 1701, and then you can get it there as well. And saying so you get to keep up. I'm starting to shorts now. And it's saying so just doing shorts saying, hey, this is the episode we're going to talk about. Let's dish about it. But say before we get all that, I just got to get the rest of my script. That's the other thing. I'm starting to do scripting now. But one thing that does make this show, I mean, there's a lot of great Star Trek podcasts out there. I look up to a lot of them. I watch some of them when I'm able. But one thing that makes this one unique, other than being the first technically track, is that we welcome live participation, not just in the YouTube chat, but if you're feeling bold enough, click on the link in the description below at Dave Prime 1701. It'll get you to StreamYard, and then that'll get you a spot to be able to come live on camera with us to discuss the topic. Or what makes technically Trek technically is we kind of interweave real life situations into what we're talking about.
Yeah,
And
we drift a little bit sometimes, but we always come back to the topic at hand. But we do welcome people to come chat with us. And, you know, I mean, I love talking to people. I really do, even though, you know, humans. But, you know, I do love talking to new people. And, you know, maybe even there's some insomniac British people that are watching, you know, come join so I'm not on my own.
yeah. Yeah,
Or
let's
girls, just girls in general, from anywhere across the world. I am always the only girl on the show. But no, I don't mind my boys. I really don't. But no, you don't have to have your camera on. We turn ours off all the time. We just want to hear your lovely voices. We really do. And we want to get to know your beautiful souls as well.
absolutely. And the one thing that I ran out of time of doing today, I was talking backstage all the stuff that I needed to do, but my services were needed elsewhere. The thing, I'm always one of being of service to help those that are in need. So I gave one of my housemates a ride to work because his original ride, his car essentially it blew up. I see
Oh dear.
something in the engine blew, and then the back window exploded. And that I heard that
Oh.
from like 30 feet away. I just like, what the frick was that? And the next thing I know, he's punching the car. He's just taking out his frustrations on the car. So it's like, yeah, that's not going to accomplish anything, dude. If anything, it's going to fracture your
No.
hand.
Yeah, but I can understand how cathartic it might be. I
Oh,
really can. But no, don't injure
yeah,
yourself.
yeah. Because no, my old man actually, I remember I pissed him off once, and instead of hitting me, he right in the wall, and he hit square on the stud, and he fractured two of his knuckles. I think
Ouch.
I was thinking about 14 or 15 when that happened. But yeah,
Yeah.
this episode tonight is always for those that are sci-fi geeks. It's a reuniting two principal actors from the TV show Quantum Leap, say Scott Bakula and Dean Stockwell, and it's just like Al's gone rogue. He seemed all
I'm
nice and
sorry,
prim and proper, but
but one thing I did notice. Do you know when Archer and what's his face met? I can't
Rat,
remember his name. Pardon?
no, Archer and Mayweather. Or are you
No,
talking about
the
Grat?
guy that was in Quantum Leap.
Yeah, Colonel Grat was the character's name.
Yeah,
Dean Stockwell.
yeah. When they first met, when Archer and Mayweather went into his office, did you notice the way he was holding the
The pad.
yeah, the way he was holding it
Oh,
and the way he was like using his other hand, it was exactly the same pose that he used in Quantum Leap.
when he had the interface for Ziggy. Yeah. Oh my.
Yes, Ziggy. The way he was holding it and the way he was using it, and then the way he kept looking back up at Arch, it was like a flashback to Quantum Leap. And I'm just like, I love that they got that in there. I don't know if they did it
That,
deliberately or not, but it was in there, and I loved that.
see, you know what? Now in retrospect, I'm seeing that. It's like, oh my God, I missed that. So go,
See,
Kate.
usually I don't notice things like that. I usually notice mistakes.
Same.
I'm not very good on noticing things like that, but I watched Quantum Leap almost religiously when I was younger. And
Oh, as did I.
yeah, and so I think that's why I noticed. But it was just a little tiny thing that I needed to
Yeah.
bring up.
But saying we got backstage, we got Travis and we got Zach that may or may not be active with the chat, but say Travis is saying he had some like trivia, his usual like little trivia. Say, did you know? So I'm gonna hand it off to him for that. How's it going, sir?
Well, real quick, I just wanted to say, give a shout out to the LA Dodgers for
Oh
winning the
yes.
World Series. But look, uh, hey, it's just a little friendly rivalry between. It was like the Dodgers of LA and then the Toronto Blue Jays and stuff, and you know this whole thing about Canada and stuff and everything else. We are very much as friends, and we feel the utmost respect to Canada and stuff and everything else. It was just a good little friendly rivalry and everything else. I was pleasantly surprised to see the Dodgers win, but if the Blue Jays won, it wouldn't have been a big loss too, because they could have gloated, and they could have that moment of saying, the Canadian pride, and just one of the things where they could say, stick it to the who in the White House and stuff, and that damn ridiculous ballroom that he's supposedly that's going to cost now 300 million dollars to build and stuff. But I just want to give a shout out to the Dodgers for winning the World Series.
I'm saying I'm just glad that they beat the Blue Jays because the Blue Jays beat the Mariners in 7 games. So
That's
I
what I thought you was gonna say.
yeah, because I still say it's like the Seattle could have done it, but they had that big win in Toronto, then they lost the 2 games at home, which is like
Sports ball.
baseball,
It's
Baseball.
sports ball.
sports
Sports
ball.
ball.
Some type of sports
Yeah,
ball.
but yeah, Seattle could have done it, but they choked, but
Yeah.
they choked
Yeah.
at the very end. So I mean, hopefully this is a sign that the club is going better directions. I mean, Dan
I mean,
Wilson, who used to play for him
that's
back in the
Detroit for you, man. Detroit always chokes.
no,
Toronto's basically Detroit.
but
Uh
but Dan Wilson, he used to play for the Mariners in the late '90s, early 2000s. He's the head coach now. And look what they did. Saying so, fingers crossed they can duplicate this next year because they're still the only Major League Baseball team to not make it to a World
win.
Series.
Right. But the Blue Jays haven't won a World Series in 30 years. So
Yeah,
it would have been a little bit they would have been a little happier in Toronto and Canada if the Blue Jays won, because it's been 30 years. But yet I understand, the Mariners has the only team that has not and everything else. But needless to say,
Could be,
we spent too long to talk about baseball stuff and everything. Thank you for bringing
could be
me in,
worse.
Katie.
It could
Huh?
be worse. You could be like my Indians and have it won since, oh shoot, 1956.
oh damn.
It's been a
Wow.
long time. It's
Yeah.
been a
Yeah.
long time.
You know what? They still play baseball in the 24th century. Well, you could say in the future in Star Trek and everything, because we've seen Benjamin Sisko in Deep Space Nine. But we're here to talk about
Mm,
Enterprise in this particular episode, which like you said, Dave, in the opening
it's
monologue and
beautiful.
stuff. This is very touching, especially for us Americans, because if we do not know our past, we don't understand. We be repeating our own mistakes in our own future, stuff like that. More than 80 years ago, what happened here in this country? I mean, if no one knows and stuff, just getting right to the nitty gritty and stuff, was that marzipan, you know. Uh and it's just it brings up a little bit of things where people hear that and you be like, marzipan. Dave mentioned that before, because he even mentioned it before on the show and stuff. Um it's a place out in the California deserts. It's on the west side of the Sierra Nevada. It's about 330 miles from Los Angeles, which is 370 kilometers, north and stuff. And also, too, marzipan means apple orchard in Spanish. You know, apple orchard, something like that. But
It
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 it brings up something, in a sense, to where, where we seen in this particular episode where the Sulabons, who were Sulabons, but they were not genetically enhanced. And just because they were who they was locked away just out of fear that they would join, a faction of their species that has been causing, mayhem and havoc in the Tendarin, sector or system and stuff and everything. And
Yeah,
it just goes to show you too just how sensitive when it comes to this particular episode, when it comes to especially for us Americans who knows who understand, and we understand when it comes to our own history that it's not pretty. We don't whitewash it. We don't try to look over it and glaze and say, oh, we want to look at the beauty side of, what has made American exceptional. There are things that are very ugly in our past, and marzipan is very ugly.
like, and when you mentioned that marzipan was in California, because I didn't think of looking where it was, I just figured it was an internment camp. It would have been an interesting little nod if they used Tule Lake as an example instead. It's a way up in Northern California, very isolated. I'll actually try and see if I can pull a picture because I actually visited Tule Lake when I went to Crater Lake down in Southern Oregon back about 11 years ago for the 4th of
Wow, Crater
July.
Lake. Oh
And
wow.
I actually got a brief interaction with George Takei when he was the Grand Marshal for the Seattle Pride Parade. And I read his autobiography when I was in high school, and he talked about Tule Lake. That was the internment camp that most of his family spent most of the war at. They bounced around a couple of places, but then they end up getting all settled. And fortunately for them, versus um, uh, Danik's situation where he got separated from his wife, and but
Yeah.
he still had his daughter. The Takei family, they all were kept together, but it was a very isolated place, very middle of nowhere, just like the planet where the internment camp 26 was at, or
Yeah.
what it
Yeah.
what. But yeah, when I told George that I was going to visit Tule Lake, he just kind of cocked his head a little bit, bugged out his eyes a little bit. He's like, "Oh, really?" I was like, "Yeah, really." Just like, yeah.
I
So that
like
was
that
back when
stuff.
the O'Reilly owl was a big meme back then. So it's like, "Oh, really?"
Oh my.
Yeah. Well, and if I don't know how appropriate and inappropriate the discussion is talking about George there, but I say the the origin of his "Oh my" came from a guest appearance on Howard Stern, and
Oh,
I didn't know that.
yeah, he shared this story on Graham Norton, so you can find it on Graham Norton's YouTube channel. But he was talking about he was doing his press tour for Allegiance, his play that he put together, and he was sitting out in the lobby, and he's just like, "Can we listen to some music? This show, it sounds disgusting. It's vile." And that's a show that you're about to go on. And he's like, "Oh, okay." He goes out and meets Howard Stern, and Howard just says, "A man with a deep voice like that must have a big dong."
Oh,
And he just like, "Oh my." But since
yeah.
since he did it on that show, then it's recorded. So whenever someone says something outrageous, Stern would just hit the "Oh my" button.
but
You see,
in
now
this
that I
particular episode,
like.
But yeah,
I like it. I like it when I like that they read that the actor that they got to play Colonel Gant, I should say,
Gant or
was
Grat,
Dean Stockwell, and you know what, he played it well. And Katie, you mentioned that, I didn't even think about that. And then when I kind of thought, and I was just thinking to myself, I was like, oh my goodness, right? I didn't even think about, the way he was holding, the pad that he was, reading, that he was, reading off to Archer and stuff. And it was so crazy too at the beginning because you could see, like, too, that Archer and Mayweather was very confused in the in the in the first act and stuff. They was very confused. They was just like Suliban, and their preconceived notion. They thought they was the cabal and all this other stuff and everything else. They kind of had this notion of like, oh my goodness, we're around Suliban and stuff and everything. But when they actually started talking, they spoke to Gant before, and he seemed kind of nice, a little diplomatic, and just saying all this other stuff. But in a sense, in, in a in a sense, he seemed he gave the impression to me. Archer didn't seem that he was getting all the truth from the colonel. So when he spoke to the Suliban, and they actually started telling him, their backstory and everything else. And this first time I actually rewatched this in a long time, that
Same.
their home world was a wasteland 300 years ago. They started spreading out almost nomadic, almost kind of like the Herodians, because they didn't have they was nomadic. They was living in like other people's territories, and then like he's the one Suliban said that he was raised, he was brought up alongside of the Tendarans and stuff, and they didn't fear them until the Suliban, well, till the Cabal started attacking and stuff and everything else. And then one thing that shows that people's insecurity and their fears starts going places and stuff, just like what happened in World War II here in the country when Japanese American was rounded up and put into internment camps and stuff. They're like, it's for your own protection, because we don't know if you are you be sympathizing with our enemy, which you are what we are fighting against, but you look like the people that we're fighting against, basically, and you probably have sympathy, and we don't want you. That's why they sent all the Japanese soldiers that was enlisted and stuff. They sent them to Europe instead of fighting in the Pacific theater, because they were like, oh no, we can't have them in the Pacific theater. We got to send them to the European theater. But it goes to show you too that Archer and Mayweather, even Mayweather said he has preconceived notion in the beginning, and it just shows you that oh my goodness, not all they really made the Suliban in this was like, yeah, you can't leave them like this. I'm glad Archer, he wasn't bound by the prime director. There was no prime director or anything and other stuff and everything. It's just like, look, there is what he said, about 80 some of them, 89 of them, and they they had ships nearby and stuff and everything else. It was one of the things where the Tendarans seemed kind of okay, but they still seem sketchy and stuff. And it was interesting to watch how it developed over the course of the show and stuff. But then when Archer was getting questioned by Gant about um, the cabal and all the stuff, and his military intelligence and stuff started spouting out all this stuff. I'm like, man, he's got a lot of interesting stuff that Archie didn't, Archie never told him and stuff. It's like he even mentioned Broken Bow, Oklahoma, and all this other stuff, Enterprise. I was like, there's more here. When I first seen it, I'm like, there's more here than meets the eye. And I was like, yeah, they basically holding these people in this encampment just because they are fearful that they will go to the cabal because they have nothing else to live for, basically.
Yeah, see, but the answer, welcome, Lisa. Yeah, to answer your question, I think you're probably talking about when I just shared the origin of George Takei's "Oh my" catchphrase is when he was on the Howard Stern.
my.
Yeah, see, I might have to try and once I get a soundboard, I'm going to probably put that on there. I think
Absolutely, you have to.
Well, actually, I technically I got a soundboard with StreamYard, so I might just have to yoink it and put it in there.
Yes.
But yeah, I say Howard Stern.
My.
Oh yeah, like say yeah, Lisa, if you just look up George Takei and Graham Norton. He was on Graham Norton's show when he shared that story, so everyone was got a big old kick out of that. But
Oh, I love Graham Norton. He is
I oh
he is
see
lovely.
it's yeah, see, it'd been nice if he tried coming to America and doing a show in America, but just the British humor just a lot over a lot of Americans, unfortunately.
You see, the thing is, Graham Norton isn't just like British humor personified. He is gay British humor.
Oh,
And, you know, I mean, I would love to meet Graham Norton just to have a gay bitching session with him.
Yes.
well, it's pretty harmless for the most part. I mean, it's Graham Norton. I mean, it's not like shock jock, but yeah, just yeah, hearing it from him, hearing him share that story, I think makes it a little bit better. But you do you. That's what it's all about. But say, Travis, well, not backstage. Before we went backstage, you were talking about one of the actors play that Sajin, one of the Suliban, Christopher Shea.
Yeah.
Saying he just had a birthday a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
And say, but there was something else that you mentioned about him too. But I actually found an interesting connection with not just him, but the actor who played Danik as well.
Really?
His name, both, and I forgot to write the actor's name, but Christopher Shea and the guy that played those two Suliban, they both played different Volta in Deep Space Nine.
Yes, they did. Yes,
Yeah,
they did.
yeah.
They absolutely did.
Danik played a Borath in the second episode of the third season, The Search, during,
Yep.
but he was part of that hallucination, that virtual reality that the Dominion put together for that. But Sajin, he was freaking Kevin.
He was Kevin. He was
I just
Kevin.
like when I saw that. Yeah.
And did you also too know that Superbond though he played in a few episodes before where they went to one of the went to the Vulcan was that monastery on that planet where it got bombarded in the Andorians. Anyway, he played an Andorian. He played
Oh,
Andorian, I think, twice.
yeah.
I
Yes, he
think he was
did.
in that. I think he
A-
played an Andorian stuff.
and he played that bluefish guy on Voyager's think tank when
Oh,
when they were trying to get help to figure out the think tank and all that. And yeah, he was one of the aliens guest stars in that episode
oh, that
too.
is one of my favorite
Oh
Voyager
my.
episodes. I love that. But
Right,
no,
like
back to
How,
go
how
ahead,
does
go ahead.
yours say it? How does yours say it? Oh my.
but no, what one thing about this episode of Enterprise, it doesn't just have like the references to like World War II and things, but things that are still happening in today's society as well, like stereotyping. And I know that I've rambled on about this before, but it's a really big issue in the world. And I mean, the stereotyping and the stereotyping, you know, that some people are mild with it, other people are very strong with their stereotypical views. And you know, I mean, I'm covered in tattoos, you know, and people make assumptions about me because I'm covered in tattoos. And even right down to the colors that I dye my hair and everything, the way I speak, you know, and people make assumptions about me. People make assumptions about me because I wear glasses. They believe that my eyesight is bad. It is not, people. But stereotyping is one thing that I really hate. There's not many things in this world that I actually hate deeply, but stereotyping is one of the things that I do because it can be also very dangerous. I mean, some of the sweetest people that I know, men, 6 foot odd, like over 6 foot, really strongly built, covered in tattoos, bald head, they ride Harleys, and they're part of biker gangs and everything, but they are some of the sweetest, most down-to-earth people I have ever known. But people make assumptions about them that they're bad people, they're criminals, and they're not. And it really gets to me. And also, this episode has an extremely big message, and it's an oldie, but it's a goodie. Never judge a book by its cover.
Absolutely.
Because, I never do. Because,
I try not to.
I mean, literal books, sometimes I will buy them just because they are so pretty. And it's never steered me wrong. So far, and like touch wood and touch better wood, it hasn't steered me wrong so far. But I do collect pretty books, special editions and things, but I will always be like, yes, it has a pretty cover, but the contents could be very dark, and I never judge. And it's the same, just because someone has a pretty face doesn't mean to say they've got a pretty soul. Just because someone may look like a criminal doesn't mean they are. And that is the most powerful message for me from this episode is, things aren't always as they seem.
And, going back what you were saying too, Katie, and stuff like that. Right now, I mean, in this particular episode, it really showed that. Guess what? The Tendarans basically looked at the Suluban that was living in their territory, and they prejudged him, and they try not. They say they try not to. They try to dress it up in the cute way and stuff and everything else, but when it really showed at the end when the colonel was when they was escaping and stuff, and he confronted Archer in the cell or in whatever they call it, in the holding room or whatever and stuff, he said, you know basically they have no future. They were better off there, with them, because we know where these Sudabons are at. And as long as they are, under our lock and key and our umbrella and stuff and everything else,
Katie.
they pose no threat. Katie's upside down. They pose no threat and stuff and everything, because they basically written them off. The Tendarans basically written them off that Suruban did, just the species alone was, and then too, the Suruban they prejudged the human because they kind of look like the Tendarans. And hey, Jim, how are you, Jim?
Howdy, Jim.
They prejudged, Archer and Mayweather because they look closely like the Tendarans and stuff like that. So both Mayweather and the other Suliban had both preconceived notion, and Mayweather basically confronted him, basically said, "Hey, look, yes, I had my biases and my preconceived notion because you were Suliban, because we had some run-ins with them and they've not been so good, and they were part of the cabal and stuff." And then the other one basically looked at him just like, "Oh, you look just like, your species look just like the species that's been holding us, in prisoners. I guess, what y'all look alike, y'all must act alike." And in this particular, it was sad because, there were they were children, like we talked about. There were children in these and in other detention camps, as they call them and stuff. And he said that there were thousands of them being held in Tendaran camps, and stuff like that, in their territory and stuff. But it's like, I like what Archer said too at the end. He said, Mayweather said, "You think they're going to make it? Do I think they're going to get out of Tendaran space? Yeah, but Do I think they're gonna make it? It that's the bigger question right there. Are they able to go somewhere and relocate without being not so much, I can't say persecuted, but judged based on what they look like and stuff and everything is who they are. Because if they,
Mm.
species just like almost, oh, you could say this. Didn't the founders when Odo ran into when he first met the founders in the search, or I think one of the times, I don't know if it was the search part two, when he was meeting his people, they mentioned something about the shapeshifters used to be very they used to be in
Yes,
different
Jim.
worlds in the gamma quadrant. And hey Jim, and also they was feared upon before the founders started the Dominion. They was hunted and they was killed because of their abilities and stuff. So there's some similarity there. But
Mm.
I'm not gonna do too much talking. I'll let anybody else talk and stuff. Glad you
Well,
joined us, Lisa and Tim.
one thing that towards the end of the episode, though, when Danik was essentially he was pinned down, and he's telling to have Sajin run off and with his daughter to get his daughter to safety.
Yeah,
What happened to Sajin? Or or Danik? Did he survive? Because
that's a good question. I
they
didn't
can
see Danik.
yeah. After that one point, he was pinned down. Did he survive? Just we don't know. We never his character never appeared in the series again.
Mm-mm.
And saying so,
It was a
a lot
one-off.
of yeah, a lot of these Suliban that escaped never saw them again after this episode. Saying so,
Oh,
did they
Yeah.
survive? Did they go off on their own? Did they start a new colony? Did they join the cabal? So many questions. And saying
it
because
was
I
like it
mean,
was one of one-offs.
if you're being held against your will, something like that, that could in turn cause animosity and hatred in regards to that.
Yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
but
Another, yeah, yeah,
what one thing that just kind of ties in on that on a really deep personal note, I may have mentioned this in a in one of these chats. It might have been in a DT chat, but my maternal grandfather, for a time during the war, both my grandparents served in the war, and grandfathers, and my maternal grandfather, he was actually a bodyguard for a Japanese interpreter because he served in the Pacific. And saying so, my grandpa had to keep an eye on this interpreter to make sure that no one attacked him, to make sure that he was safe in unfamiliar territory. And I'm sure he probably kept an eye on him, make sure he didn't like try and steer away and join the Japanese against
yeah,
the United States. But about the 50th anniversary of Pearl Harbor, I don't know how they did it, but they ended up getting reconnected and they were writing back and forth again, 50 years after the bombing of Pearl Harbor,
Wow.
which I thought was really a really cool thing. And I pray that I can find the audio cassette that he recorded his the answers to my questions that I sent to him about his time in serving during the war. I don't remember any of the questions, but that's him sharing about that and about him and the guys in his platoon or whatever. When they were up in the Aleutians, they were sleeping in the buff, as he said. They no clothes, sleeping naked.
wow.
Yeah, in Alaska. So, but during the summer, I guess it can get a little warm up there. I don't know, but I don't know what kind of bedding they have, but they can. But yeah, I remember that little story as well. So like, okie dokie.
That is an amazing story. And thank
That
you for
is that
sharing.
is a good story to to tell and everything. My great grandfather, which is my mother's on her father's father, He
Hmm.
served in World War II. Not to get too off track and stuff and everything. He served in
Well, I mean, this is a
World War
World War
II.
II story, so don't feel sorry about it going
And
off.
well, it's so funny. My mom told this story. I mean, she told this story, oh, over 30, almost 35 years ago to my sister, myself, and my brother, that after the war, he survived. He came home. He survived. He was one of the first 3 African American males to open dentist office in Louisville, Kentucky.
Mm.
After the war and everything else. So he was pretty well known in the African American community in Louisville, Kentucky after the war and stuff and everything because he went to school to study, dentistry and stuff and everything else. But that's just a little tidbit because he learned stuff in the war. He learned some stuff in the war. And, I asked my mom, I said, did he ever talk anything about the war? Not much. He didn't really say much of stuff or didn't talk about what he seen or what happened and stuff and everything else. He just kind of just lived the rest of his life without talking so much about it and stuff and everything else, which I was like, a lot of them guys that came back, some did, some did not want to talk about, what they seen and stuff and everything else. And a lot of people just choose to go on a little life and try to, not rehash what they see because something's so traumatic, and everything. You can't get that out of your mind. It's just something that you don't want to talk about and stuff. But like you said, a lot of us who are, who live now and we live in now, we see in this, as Katie pointed out too, it's not just back happening, during World War II. But there are still things that happen today that we're still repeating the past. We're still repeat, especially in this country. There's still things that we're still fighting. We're still fighting what we thought that our great grandparents fought. People in their
Yeah.
grandparents, great grandparents, stuff like that. It was like you can't just because you step on a bunch of cockroaches don't mean that you can exterminate all of them. You know.
Exactly. It to some degree it breaks my heart that humans don't seem to learn from past mistakes. There's a long running history of, like ostracizing people, imprisoning people when they don't deserve it. And
Just
it
like this
seems to
particular episode.
Yeah, and it seems to be a repetitive pattern. And the fact that in this episode, it was shown by another species, it really does make you think, is it something inherent to humanoids in general? Or it could be not. It's not just a humanity thing. It's across the cosmos. It's almost written in the DNA of every humanoid that they repeat the same cycles. They don't learn from the mistakes. They give in to fear rather than leaning towards understanding. And they paint everyone the same color when there may only be a handful that are bad out of an entire race of beings. And it's the same in today's society that also in some ways mirrors this episode where there's the reference to internment camps and like not judging a book by its cover, but there's also like, well, if this many of this species are so bad, then all of them must be, and that they're all painted the same color when that there are like 100. I don't know how many Suliban are in the Cabal, but
A lot.
just because there is like say 1,000 Suliban in the Cabal does not mean to say that the entire race of Suliban are on board with that.
You remember they said something about Saren when Archer met Saren on Rigel, what was that Rigel 8 or something? He met Saren, and Saren, she was trying to get a message to the Klingons about, because she was genetically enhanced herself, but she didn't go along with the others, like Stilik and other on their,
Yeah.
on their whoever they was taking the future orders from and stuff like that. She was genetically enhanced, but she did not go along with that. So what you just said, it fits right there. Yes, she was part of them, but she's like, I'm not gonna have nothing to do with this because what y'all doing to
But
me is
also, this episode as well kind of mirrors the Prime Directive in some way, because this Captain whatever, this race of people, I'm terrible with names, I'm so sorry, but this Quantum Leap guy and his people, he specifically said that they're genetically engineered, and he's basically saying that he has got something against every genetically enhanced Suliban, whereas when the Prime Directive was created, it stated about like no genetically enhanced people because of the eugenics wars and things, and they're basically, and then we that was also mirrored. Well, it wasn't just mirrored, it was like it slapped everybody in the face when Una was arrested for being Illyrian. Was it Illyrian? Yeah, I remember the word. And she fought and fought, and I mean, yeah, she had to basically claim asylum, I think, if I remember correctly. But they paint like genetically enhanced. Just because a group of genetically enhanced people did bad things does not mean to say that all genetically enhanced people are like that. Look at Julian Bashir. He did nothing but
that's
good.
a good example.
He was inherently good. He was too good, in my opinion. But he became a doctor. He did everything in his power. He lived his life to help people, and his story is in a way it is similar to Una's, but like, yeah, fair enough, the eugenics wars, they were really bad, but not all genetically enhanced people should be painted with that same brush. And that's kind of like mirrored in this episode of Enterprise, that another race of beings are doing exactly the same as what humans did because of the eugenics wars. And it's kind of like this episode is also saying it's not just humanity that's at fault, it's the universe. The universe is not perfect. Other races that live somewhere out in the cosmos will make these mistakes as well. And we have to be aware of that. We have to be understanding about that. And yeah, everyone makes mistakes, and everyone can be guilty of painting people with the same brush, stereotyping, judging a book by its cover. I suppose in a way that it's not natural. It is not natural in the slightest, but it's kind of like being ingrained over the generations to do that. And that's what I've seen from this episode, that anyone can do that. It's not just humanity. As screwed up as humanity is and will be for a very long time, but the fact that they put this onto another race of beings is basically saying, this could definitely happen with another race out there in the cosmos, and we could be coming up against that in the future.
In Star Trek Voyager, there was an episode called Counterpoint, and there was a species in the Delta Quadrant that Voyager came in contact with. They Voyager needed to go through their territory in order to get across, so they can shorten their length their trip home. The
Yeah.
the species that they encountered was called the Devoran, and
Yeah.
Devoran, they was not they was a xenophobic species against telepaths,
Yes.
fear telepaths. And what they did what you just stated about that and everything else. The Devoran, basically, if they found telepath in their territory, they will seize the ship, seize whatever stuff like that, and then you'll never hear from whatever telepathic species again and stuff. But that's what I'm just saying. Star Trek has a way of showing, the kind of
Yeah.
xenophobia and the hatred in the sense of different people's abilities, or people's looks, or people's yeah, and we can say this about today in today's model about, like, what's been happening in the world about people in the LGBTQ community, the rainbow community too.
Exactly.
There's a lot that there are people in the LGBT community who are not fans of trans people. I'm just going on record to say that I have heard that there are those that say, and right now trans has become an issue. It's become a political topic of hot button in the last 10 years or so and stuff. And it's one of those things where it's like, oh, when you hear the word trans, you think the worst. You think the negativity and stuff and everything else, if you are not a person who are a supporter of a person that is trans and stuff. But needless to say, the thing about that, we've seen this throughout. Like, Star Trek has a way of throwing us some of these episodes and things about with you know the suspicion and xenophobia when it comes to people's
People who are different to yourself.
people's preconceived notions about other species and stuff and everything else. Zach, are you with us?
No, I think he stepped out.
Okay.
But no, I completely agree with you, Travis. And it is something to think about. And Trek always does this. And this is one of the things I love about Trek minus TOS. But I'm one of these people where
Wow.
I don't care if you are a man,
Okay.
woman, if you are cis, trans, bi, gay, lesbian. You could have purple skin and bright green hair. I couldn't give a rat's ass. I really couldn't. I'm speaking of rats. But I really couldn't. The only thing that matters to me is if you are a decent person or not. That is literally the only thing that matters to me. And thank you. But I don't judge people, and I will neither trust nor distrust somebody until I get to know them properly. And I will stay completely neutral, and I will get to know that person, or group of people, and I will just stay completely neutral. And I don't judge, but this is a big thing now. People judge, people hate for no reason. And like Jim's just said, like, transphobia and hate mongering is growing so fast in Canada.
Even in Canada. In Canada, the Canadians are friendly and loving and outgoing people and stuff and everything else. I'm sitting there like, please don't let some of our what we doing down here in the States come over there.
This is the thing. It spreads like a cancer. It really does. And it kind of like humans do, I suppose, but we won't get into that. But all it takes is for one tiny ember, one tiny spark to set off a wildfire. And unfortunately, and now a lot of viewers are going to hate me for this, but you all, if you're regular viewers, you will know I always speak the truth and I speak my mind.
Same.
If people want to be sheep and follow the herd just to be included, by all means, have at it. But walk in that direction, leave me over here, and I will find my people who know how to think for themselves. Because today's society, not a lot of people can think for themselves. You know, people have been brought up to believe something. I was brought up a certain way, you know, but one thing that my mother always encouraged is to learn to have an open mind, regardless of where we were brought up, how much money we did or did not have, you know, what we wore or anything. You know, it was always to be kind, to have an open mind, not to judge. And they're things that I've held on to. And I thank my mother for that. Because I mean, my mother, honestly, sometimes she's like a living hippie. She's not as bad, she's not as extreme as Margie, but who we absolutely adore. But you know,
We need to get him on one of these
yeah.
episodes.
But you know,
That
my mum's very open-minded. She is very considerate, and I've clung on to those values as well. But I also think for myself, me, you know, I may cling on to my upbringing and how I've been brought up, but me and my mother are very different. As similar as we are very different, because my mother taught me to think for myself. And I have very different opinions to my mother on some things, but we've sat for hours and spoke about these things before, you know, and we've had like really deep conversation about it, and we've got a better understanding of each other. And if people did that more, just in general, there'd probably be less hate, because so many people think, oh, we are the complete opposites. We don't like the same things. We don't agree on hardly anything. You know, a lot of people just be like, oh, we can't be friends. But I mean, don't get me wrong, I do question our friendship, Travis, you know, because of the TOS thing, but it's all in good fun. And I love you so much, even though you like TOS and, you know, you think I'm a traitor to Trek for hating it. But, you know, you know, it's all in good fun, and we've had discussions about it, and we understand where each other are coming from, and yet we still manage to wind each other up about it.
Real quick, 2K, before you go name it, guys, give us a like and subscribe, and you know what? If you can, if you want to join us, we ask all participation to come and join us, whether that be in chat or if you're, you know, if like Dave said earlier, if you're feeling bold enough, come and turn your camera on your, you know, laptop or your camera on your phone or something. Or if not, you can do audio and you don't have to. You can, if you camera shy and stuff and everything, but we encourage, you know, people to come and chat with us live while we're live and everything else. So yeah, just give us a like and subscribe, and you know, follow the channel and everything else, and keep up to date on, you know, things, especially Dangerous Thoughts. I call it Dangerous Thoughts 2.0 with Monument Ramey and Tyson Strasberg. You know, they are having a, you know, upgraded type of thing and stuff, but like you know, we encourage interactive with all of us.
yeah.
Yeah, come
Thanks
harass
for
us,
stealing my
people.
thunder,
Come
Travis.
harass us.
I was just going to actually talk about that. So just like, because we got 6 slots available currently, so there we got plenty of room for you to pop in, say hi, what you liked about this episode, what you didn't like, what you think about how it connects with society today,
Right.
and
Like you
historically
said.
as well.
Yeah,
'Cause I
this particular episode really fits in with, like, you know, not just what happened in the past, but like, you know, what's been like we just said, like, you know, Katie and myself and Dave, we just talked about. It's like you could take real world, what's happening in the real world, and this particular episode and be like, oh man, that happened back then, but it's like, what, that fits into something that's happening today and stuff like that and everything. It's just like it's sad, but it happened, and it happens, and it is one of the things where we just had it because Katie wasn't here for the other day about the Voyage episode of fear. Fear is one of the strongest of human emotions that we give way to and stuff and everything. Our fears for anything, whether it be the fear of clowns or the fear of another human being that is different from you, like Katie pointed out. Somebody that looks different, somebody that look totally ominous and stuff, but yet they could be the most kind sweetheart and everything else. It's come down to fear is probably a universal thing.
Lost my train of thought. Yay. Yeah.
Yay! We like doing that today.
Said in chat. Katie, yeah, in chat. Oh.
But no, I did pop into the chat last week. And yeah, fear is a very powerful emotion, and it's not just an emotion, it's a state of being. And it can be a very debilitating thing. I mean, you should see me if I'm confronted with a spider. Jesus Christ.
Well, I've had my moments with that too, so yeah.
Honestly, these guys have been on a call with me on Discord, and there's been a spider in my room, and I have completely freaked out. I've had to turn my camera off. I've had to mute myself because I've just gone, ah! And I've had to hoover them up and throw them outside, and I was brave. And I apologize to the spiders. I always apologize to them before I squish them or hoover them. But fear can do strange things to you. I'm not scared of a lot of things, but the things I am scared of are, it grips me powerfully. And
in this particular episode, fear turned species into, a xenophobic,
yes,
hateful way and stuff. But then there are fears that, in a sense, like you just pointed out, the fear of clowns, the fear of spiders, the fear to protect that protects us from unnecessary danger, that keeps us alert, to tell us not to go into danger and stuff and everything else. So in this particular,
that's a healthy kind of fear. It's that is something that is like built into our DNA, like the fight or flight response, and the intuition, kind of like Spider-Man's Spidey sense in a way. Humans do have a very similar intuition, not as powerful, but don't even go there, Jim. Don't even go there.
No, what about the spiders in Australia? I've seen some of those spiders in Australia.
Don't even go there. That's one of the reasons I will never set foot on Australian soil.
What's wrong with What's wrong with 8-legged freaks?
They all need to be squished.
Yeah, but these 8-legged freaks
referencing a David Arquette movie.
Yes, I know.
Was it Arachnophobia?
One movie I refuse to watch.
That's a better one.
No.
I like that one better.
No. I struggle watching Harry Potter because of Aragog. Is it Aragog?
I think so, yeah. When I watched that, I shut my eyes. I'm just like, la 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 la.
No,
is it a spider in there?
Is the worst for me. As much as that is my favorite movie out of the franchise, hate the books. I hate the books. They're boring as hell. But I look. Chamber of Secrets is my favorite, but I just cannot watch that really big scene where they first meet the spiders. But this is why I'm on the side of the basilisk. And I love snakes. What can I say? But no, fear can do strange things to people. Fear can turn into hate, and that's what we've seen in this episode. I knew there was a reason.
That's a good movie,
even more. But you know, I mean, who was it that said? Was it? I can't remember his name. Is it Roosevelt? We have nothing to fear but fear itself.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
that was FDR. FDR.
Yeah. But
So
you
that
know, to some degree, that is true, because fear can turn into a lot of things. Fear can turn into addiction. Fear can turn into hate. Fear can turn into violence. Fear can turn
just like
into
in this episode,
xenophobia. Yeah,
in this particular
exactly.
episode with the
Exactly.
Tandars.
And this is why I've brought it up, and it kind of like links to last week's episode in a way, because that was all about fear, and then we've gone on to this episode where fear reigns supreme. But also, I think as well that a lot of the time, fear can stem from jealousy, because you think about it. If take the genetically enhanced Suliban, for instance, or in the Cabal, they can do things that we can't. You know, they can camouflage, they can shapeshift to some degree, that they can see in the dark, you know, they can do so much. And at first, that could be like, oh, that is real, that is absolutely amazing that could happen. And then like people could start thinking, oh, I wish I could do that, I wish I had that ability. And that jealousy can get more and more. And then eventually, especially if one of these genetically enhanced beings have done something bad, that quickly turns into fear, you know. And then it can be like, oh, well, we need these genetic enhancements. And it, you know, things just can morph from one emotion to the other. And it can be very dangerous, fear. And I mean, so can jealousy. And those, I mean, people say that love can be dangerous and hate can be dangerous, but fear and jealousy, in my opinion, are the two most dangerous emotions, because they can lead to so much more than love or even hate, you know. And because jealousy can turn to hate, fear can turn to hate, and it's a scary thing, fear. It is. And especially those who, you know, are sheep, and they just follow the herd so that they can have a peaceful life. Kind of like, it's kind of in a way like an ignorance is bliss thing, but a little bit different, you know, if that makes any sense. That they follow the herd like good little sheep, and they don't have a bad word said about them, but everything they do is fake, because some of those people who are following the herd may not want to, but they feel the need to, and they fear what would happen if they don't. So fear can also lead you to do things you really don't want to do. It can make you act out of character. And that's another powerful message from this episode. And I'm really glad that you brought up the element of fear, Travis, because that is a big element in this episode of Enterprise. And it's worrying. It's worrying. It really is, how fear can morph and twist a person's mind and actions.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely. And in this particular episode too, because they uh we didn't see too much about on Enterprise and stuff and everything else, but like at first, Paul went along with this whole thing. They're gonna be transported to the homeworld for the magistrate, or whatever stuff and everything else. And she's like, if you're out here in space, you got to follow, people's laws and stuff and everything else. Until they started getting the runaround from Colonel Grant, and it was like, okay, to Paul, I know you're a logical Vulcan, and you want to stick to things, but like I'm glad she kind of listened to, you know, who was it? Trip on, look, it doesn't hurt to take a detour to be like whatever stuff, blah blah blah, because it seemed kind of sketchy and stuff and everything else. And I'm like, this shows it kind of starts showing that T'Pol was getting comfortable, with being around humans and listening to the crew instead of just like, following her stoic, logical way of thinking and stuff. I like that part in this particular episode with T'Pol.
Yeah, she was definitely bit of a even though this is late season 1, she's starting to kind of acclimate to dealing with humans and just like, oh, Zoomy Katie.
Oh, never mind.
Cameron's acting up on you tonight.
I know it was being so good. I don't know what went wrong with it. I'm gonna have to try and do something about it. It's really pissing me off.
What is it? What did you do last time? You just unplugged it for a minute and plugged it back in, and that seemed to clear it up for a little while, or because it wasn't
The play,
properly?
I like that.
It's a false. It's like a loose connection. For some reason the USB doesn't go into the port snug. For some reason, I don't know why, because all the other USBs that I've got do. But people are just going to have to deal with me, zooming in, zooming out, tipping upside down, back Katie, woo.
Well, Katie, sometimes my USB always goes into the port really easy, and it zooms in and zooms out whenever I can. That was a giggity moment.
Yeah. Where's Chris when you need him?
I had to throw out that little giggity moment and stuff.
Oh,
yeah, the oh my part, and I didn't even hear Zach say it and stuff and everything.
Well, I said it because Zach's deserted us. I'm going to be having words with him.
Yes, he's multitasking. He's doing his own thing.
He is, and I love him for it. Right, that's a little bit better.
If you're still with us and you hear us, did you even watch this particular episode or anything? Do you have any thoughts and opinions before we conclude this show tonight?
Do we want to conclude it, or do we just run out of things to say? But I just got to say though, like talking about T'Pol, the way she kind of ingratiated, trying to butter Grant up, I guess you can say. It's like, well, let's just say smooth this out. But when they end up beaming Malcolm down to the planet, is the way they just kind of overloaded their communications network. Say, well, let me send you this. Let me send you that. Do you want to have it? Do you want to have it?
Their entire database, the Vulcan database. She was asking him questions about like being a meat eater or a carnivore or a vegetarian, and irrelevant facts, relevant stuff. It's like, oh, I see what you're doing, T'Pol. I was like, okay, I like that. And traditionally Vulcans don't lie, but they can bend.
Well, the thing is, she never lied. I actually
She
think
didn't.
she'd have been willing to have him go up to the Enterprise just to get him out of there so that it was a distraction.
I thought so
She
too.
would have done that, you know, and like she's not a meat eater and they send all the database, and I really did like that. But one thing that made me laugh was the way
That's
she
hilarious.
kept glaring at Trip whenever
Yes.
he was talking to the
And
guy
that-
on the screen, and
I
then
missed
he was
that.
just like, a Vulcan lawyer, I'd rather have the electric chair.
Yes.
Just like, yes, I would too.
Yes. Oh my goodness. That was a
That had to be the zinger of the episode.
He
Oh,
said
I absolutely
electric,
love that.
straight face. She said electric chair. She just was like, she didn't know what Trick was talking about, the electric chair. I was just like, oh,
Exactly. But
oh,
I thought
Vulcans.
that was just so funny. And, you know, I mean, even though, you know, I know what happens in Enterprise, you know, when I do a rewatch, I stop it before the final ever episode, and that's me done. But I always said from like, I think I remember when I got given the DT homework to watch Enterprise all the way through, and like I had to the same with Discovery, you know, I remember after watching like 2 episodes, or was it the end of the first episode, the pilot episode? I think I don't know who I said it to, but I know it was a few people. I says I can see something happening between Trip and T'Pol because
I
of
was
their
one of the people that
interaction. Yeah, and I said I can see them getting together. And I don't know, was it you, Dave, who like put a really like shocked face when I messaged you, and your reply was just like loads of like emojis and like that. I just keep watching. I can't tell you. And then the more I watched it, I'm just like, I'm right. I'm right. But you can see
I like what
it.
Jim
Yeah,
said in
I-
chat.
I-
I like what Jim said in chat. If y'all see that, what he said in chat, I like what he said in chat about when they was in season 3 of The Expanse. I like what he said about that. That right there.
Yeah.
I was trying to look for it in the chat again.
But no, even though this was a really deep and serious episode, there were a few funny moments.
Absolutely.
I did like that, especially the interactions with T'Pol and Trip on the bridge, and like especially the electric chair one. That would I actually forgot about that, but when I watched it tonight, I couldn't help but cackle a little bit. And you know, that's another thing I love about Trek as well. Regardless of how serious an episode is, there is at least one interaction, one sentence that is said that you can smile about or you can laugh about, regardless of the seriousness of the situation, you know. And I love that, because I've watched some episodes of Trek, this one as well, that's really hit me in the feels. And because you know how I watch things, you know that I dive deep into the psychology, and it's really nice when I go on that really deep dive into something, especially an episode like this, when there's just that one little funny moment that just breaks the tension for a little bit. And that is, you know, I take my hat off to the writers, and that, like, whatever writers they ever have on Trek, I know they have a lot of different ones throughout, you know, but it's one thing they always seem to do, and they did it for me in this episode, but it fits so well. Sometimes it can seem a little bit forced in some ways, like it's specifically being put there to try and ease tension and break it up a little bit, but this, and I think they did this in Enterprise better than they did in any other. And it was always with Trip or Porthos. But you know, Porthos, he's my, I love Porthos. But you know, just the one-liners from Trip that are just, he just doesn't care. But what he says is just so funny, the way he says it, even in the midst of a serious situation, you know, he could be telling Archer how badly damaged the warp core is, and he'll say something that'll make me laugh. And that'll even make Archer laugh, you know. And in that sense, I think that those little moments were done a lot better in Enterprise than any other Trek series, because with someone like Trip, it comes so naturally.
Absolutely, absolutely. He has that way of, of levity when it comes to, you know, how he states things, state out the obvious in a, funny way,
Yeah.
without it being such a, way like, oh my goodness, he said that, he said that on the bridge and
Well,
stuff,
yeah,
and
but
then
that's just him.
T'Pol didn't get she didn't get the reference because of course she's not from Earth and stuff and everything, but she didn't even get the reference about the electric chair stuff. But the others on the bridge knew what knew what he was talking about. But that's the thing,
Yeah.
just throwing a little levity in to the character in the moment of
But
something
that
serious.
is just Trip, and that's one that in a way that's why I fell in love with Enterprise. When I watched it properly, it was Trip and Porthos, obviously. Why I fell in love with Enterprise, because his personality is so easy to get on with, and he is a gentleman. He is such a sweetheart. He has a sense of humor, but he don't take any shit neither. And he will put people in their place, even, or have a dig at someone, but he will do it in a very funny way. And that's just how he rolls. That is like ingrained into his DNA. And I do love that. And especially in this episode, like I said, it did help to break up some of the tension of the episode a little bit, because the rest of it has been like, the majority of it was like really serious and ominous. But that's one of the reasons why I love Trip. And I take my hats off to the writers, but also to the actor who plays him. Oh no, he'd have made a brilliant mother. Oh no. honestly, I would love Trip Tucker to be a parent for me. He would be so fun. And I'd love to see him as a parent.
I mean,
Yeah,
for
that
the
we
time
actually,
being, he was.
yeah, we
Well,
talked about that
yeah.
episode a while back.
Yeah,
Let's
and
see.
I
He
think
was him and T'Pol. They had
I
a
know.
child that they did not know about, but she only lived for just a very brief moment, in in the time frame that we seen and stuff and everything else, you know.
You see, do you
But
know what? And this episode is a perfect example of stereotyping and all that, which we have discussed. But the fact that we're talking about Trip, I just want to tell a little story. And it kind of does circle back to the theme of this episode. Going by his accent, and he comes across as a bit of a Jack the Lad sometimes, which he really isn't. But I was talking to someone, I can't even remember who it was, and I was saying how much I love Trip, and he's like, minus Porthos, he's like one of my favorite Trek characters, and they were really shocked that I even liked him, and I'm like, well, why wouldn't I? And they're just like, oh well, even though he was an engineer, is not very smart and all this lot. And I'm just like, well, why isn't he? And what was it? They'd said something. It was an American term, and I can't remember what it was, but they basically said that because he had a southern accent, he wasn't intelligent and all this lot, and he didn't give a crap, and and all this lot. And I'm just like, hold on a minute, he's a sweetheart. When he found out he was pregnant, he did everything he could to find the baby's mother. And it would, I mean, that rant he had about safety in the elevator, that was just that was so funny, but so sweet as well, and he would do anything for his crew, and he's a lot more intelligent than people give him credit for, and he is a true gentleman, and he's funny, even when he don't mean to be, and this person I was talking to didn't see any of that. And they just painted him with this like big stereotype because of his accent. Is obviously not very educated, and he's just a grease monkey who only knows one thing. And that is very common over here in England as well. Like certain accents and things like that, people assume things about you, and that is a big theme in this episode that we're discussing now. It's amazing how somebody can make a judgment on another person just by their looks or where they're from, but just their accent. I was very shocked by that.
Yeah, it definitely would put a lot of preconceived notions when it comes to trying to figure that all out.
Yeah.
But did you know
once you get to know him, this guy's brilliant.
Well, yeah, but did you know? I don't know what it was like in America, but do you know when like television started to become a thing?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, over here in England, snooker is a very big thing. And like the championships and everything. And originally, yes, judges you in Klingon. But originally, like when TV was first aired, you could only speak in a certain way. People on screen had to have a certain accent. They had to be very posh and prim and proper. And then when snooker started to be aired, the commentators, they also had to speak all prim and proper. It's relaxed a lot now, but that gave people in other countries who watched British TV a lot of misconceptions about the English across here in the UK. And, everybody assumed that we spoke like Queen Elizabeth. Or, like, if you was a man, everybody speaks like Benedict Cumberbatch, But that's not the case. And things like that. I mean, don't get me wrong, television, radio, because radio was even worse. But things like that did not help with stereotyping and like false presentation and things like that. And all of that, like looking at our history in that sense, it still goes back to this episode that we're discussing of misconceptions. Mm-hmm. And stereotyping, and it's almost like a vicious circle.
It is
that we can't seem to break.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm very passionate about this subject. I really am.
Yeah, that is a very good TOS episode, Jim, that I'd love to discuss, but But yeah, see, we are out of time tonight. See, I do have a commitment that I have to rescue one of my housemates in about 20 minutes from work, so it's going to take me about
Yes.
15 minutes to get there. So, but next week we're going to bop back over to Voyager. We're going to talk the episode Dreadnought. Say B'Elanna comes face to face with a weapon that was designed to to destroy Maquis military base or Maquis base, and B'Elanna was able to hotwire it and make it go for a Cardassian base, but instead it got swept up by the
Echelon Prime.
caretaker. What?
Echelon
Yep.
5, I should say.
And then the following week, we already got it lined up. I am particularly proud of this graphic as we're going to talk another movie. We're going to talk Star Trek Generations because November 17th, 1994, I actually got a sneak peek at the movie. It was pre-released the Thursday before it aired, or it was released nationally on the 18th of November, so I got to see it on the 17th. So, bam, we're going to talk Generations. And I kind of sort of superimposed two images to make this graphic. So I was like, yay, I think it turned out beautifully.
Oh, this gonna be a fun subject to talk about because
Yeah,
it
see,
was
there's a lot of stuff to get in the
And
spirit
everyone
of.
knows. And everyone knows I'm going to be ranting about Kirk, and everyone knows I'm going to be fangirling over Data and Spot.
Oh yes. But yeah, that episode's probably gonna go a little long, so buckle up.
There's a lot to talk about in
Insane.
that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be about a year since I was a guest commentator when Strange New Pod did it for the 30th anniversary. So we're at where
Wow.
we're at right now. So we're going to do it on the 31st anniversary. Wow, these dentures are just not working for me tonight. But
Sweet, I don't have false teeth, and I trip over my tongue. It's not your teeth, it's your tongue.
Thank you, Jim, for stopping by. We appreciate you
Oh
coming
yeah,
by
we love
anytime.
you, Jim.
You
yeah,
take care. Be safe.
Yep. Be safe. Say until next week. May Spock be with you. Hailing frequencies are now closed.